well. Great to see you all. My name is Greg Leparati. I'm Associate Director of Alumni Relations at Baruch College. Pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Feel free to put in the chat where you are Zooming from. We've had alumni joining us from all over the world throughout our various webinars we've hosted, so it's always cool to see where people are tuning in from. Hope everyone in New York is prepared for a very cold weekend. Oh, someone from Arizona in the chat. Wow. Well, we are very jealous here in New York where it's going to be single digits the next 2 days. So hope everyone's ready for that coming up this weekend. But for now, here we are for another webinar this evening, and very excited to have our first financial literacy webinar of the year with Alan Chen. We're so grateful to have. A few quick ground rules before we get started. Everyone can turn on their cameras if they'd like. We like to see our alumni's faces. But please mute your microphones so we don't have any ambient noise to distract us. If there is a time later where we want you to speak, we can definitely unmute you. But please keep it muted for the duration of the presentation. Direct all questions to the chat bar. We will answer them in real time for the most part, but if anything doesn't get answered, don't worry. We will have time at the end to address any additional questions. And as a final note, we are recording this and we will distribute that afterwards. So for anyone who's worried about missing anything, don't worry, we will send it to you afterwards. And Alan will also provide the slides that he used as well, just like with our prior events. So that being said, I'd like to now introduce Alan. At this point, I've introduced Alan so many times, I hope everyone knows him. Alan is a fixture of our webinar series. He's a fantastic alum. We're so grateful to have him. He's a Baruch alum himself. And you would think after getting a degree from a great business school like Baruch, he would know how to manage his finances. But it turns out after he graduated, Alan had no idea what to do with the money he was earning. So he decided to correct that. He decided to become something of an armchair expert in financial literacy. He comes from a low-income immigrant family, and much of this knowledge is just simply not taught. So Alan taught himself, and now he wants to share that knowledge with other alumni. His goal is to help everyone retire happily. By day, he works for Rent the Runway in software engineering, and by night, he studies financial literacy and creates YouTube videos. I highly recommend you subscribe to check those out. But without further ado, I now present Alan Chen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the great introduction, Greg. And welcome back to anyone that's coming back for another time with me when it comes to financial literacy. And welcome to all the new folks that are here. Financial literacy is a very difficult topic, but definitely worth discussing just because, the more people talk about, the better prepared we all are for the financial year ahead of us. And as we know from the previous year, financial literacy plays a huge part into everything in regards to your lifestyle and how it's impacted both inflation and also job security, right? Very huge points. Now, I run a financial literacy YouTube channel on the side, which I will talk a little bit more about and also plug videos throughout this. So, please excuse my excitement when it comes to my YouTube channel. But definitely check them out just because there's an opportunity for me to dig deeper into certain topics that I might not have the time to discuss right now. And like Greg mentioned, please ask questions in the chat. I'm always happy to stop and talk about it just because that's the best time to chat about it rather than wait towards the end, but also happy to stick around. All right, just to recap what Greg said, a quick summary about myself. I come from a low-income immigrant background. My parents were not English-speaking immigrants. They didn't really know much about money, didn't really want to talk about it. Our idea of financial planning was waiting for the tax refund to come in and then maybe taking a vacation with it or saving it for tutoring classes or something like that. Right? That was our version of financial planning. So no thought was really given towards retirement, college savings, and so on. Right? So both of that is due to a lack of access to financial literacy, and also there just wasn't enough money to go around, right? Coming from a low-income background, you can't always afford to save, and I understand that. And it's difficult, right? But knowing that, I understood that, hey, I have to improve myself the second I'm able to start planning, I should, right? I've taught many of these workshops at this point. I've taught 38 volunteer workshops, some with Baruch, some with other colleges. And I've done 2 paid workshops last year in regards to financial literacy. And also I've been setting personal financial goals for 6 years, ever since I graduated from college and I started making money. Before that, I had no money, so there was nothing to financially plan except for my next college textbook or my lunch, right? So, but once you start making money, it becomes more of a difficult task, but also more rewarding depending on how you approach it. Quick disclaimer: I am not your financial advisor or your attorney, specifically, in regards to understanding your full situation, right? So, obviously, this presentation is an opinion and for informational purposes only. Do your own research. I'll cite my sources, but it still means you should double check, those sources and make sure that what I'm speaking about is accurate, and do your own research before you make any financial decisions. Right? It's part of educating folks on financial literacy. All right, so let's talk about some statistics. CNBC referred to this research that was done in 2022, which basically dug into the topic of financial literacy and how much it cost folks in the year 2022. Right, so 62% of people said that the lack of financial literacy cost them somewhere between $0 to $499, right? And 15% of people said it cost them over $10,000. Right? What does this really usually translate to? You could think of it as, issues ranging from managing credit card debts, auto loans, increasing credit scores, paying taxes, and so on. Like mistakes in these areas could potentially cost you thousands of dollars if you don't truly understand, what you're doing and what you're signing yourself up for when it comes to your finances. And there's been many concerning studies about financial literacy over the years. We've all seen like half of America can't pay for an unexpected $1,000 expense. We've all seen that one. And there's been a whole bunch, right? We're definitely not in the golden age of a flourishing middle class that can plan financially, right? Really, either you're not making enough money or you are making enough money, but you don't really know where to go from there, right? So it's really about thinking about your financial goals and breaking them down, especially since we are at the beginning of the year, new year, new me, right? So it's the perfect opportunity to really dig into it. All right, let's define financial planning, right? Financial planning is the ongoing process of optimizing your personal finances to reach your life goals, right? So what it's not is accumulating wealth for the sake of accumulating wealth, right? That's not a good motivator for making more money. It's defining what your life goals are, whether it's I want to buy a home, right? Or I want to buy a new car, right? Whatever that may be, and really thinking about that goal every year so that you can hit those those metrics for making money, right? It's not always easy. It's probably not going to be easy, because if it was easy, I wouldn't need this presentation. But at the very least, you'll have a good idea by the end of this about how to break down goals, and we'll talk about various examples, both simple and complicated. All right, so my financial goals. So I talked about my financial goals in a YouTube video that I won't dig into here too much, but just to detail some of them out. One of my goals, and I think should be everyone's goal for next year, increase your compensation. Right, this can be your benefits plus your salary and so on. My goal is to increase it by 10%. Right, in the video, I talk about my goals for the year 2022 and how well those went, and then my goals for 2023. Right, so that's a great video to to understand my thought process and how I think about all these goals. Second here was to reach a savings rate of 50%. Won't dig too much into how this calculated or anything like that, but I think it's a good goal for everyone to have as well, to just understand, hey, how much am I saving every month and so on, to really try to hit specific saving goals. And third part is just something I wrote myself, just to reach 1,000 YouTube subscribers. So if you're here, you're not subscribed, help me along the way. Hit that subscribe button. But if not, that's cool too. It's not a deal breaker for me. But those would be my financial goals. And just something to something I wanted to share with folks. So help you get help you start thinking about what yours might be if you haven't already thought about them. Hey everyone, hopefully your new is playing. They don't want it to play. Sorry about that. You can watch at your own time. But it's very difficult to pick a financial goal, right? You saw some of mine, and there's really a whole bunch of financial goals out there, and you could choose any one of them, right? But some of them you might not be ready for, or some of them you might have already accomplished without even knowing about it, right? Some basic ones are like saving 3 to 6 months of emergency funds, buying a car, creating a budget, estate planning. There's just a whole bunch out there, and it can be overwhelming, right? And honestly, it's unrealistic to tackle all of them at once. Sure, I may have listed all these goals here, but I can guarantee you, even I haven't done all of them. But it's important to start somewhere, right? You can't just look at this list and say, I'm going to pick one out from here and decide where to go. So I would definitely recommend checking out this flow chart here. It's a personal income spending flow chart, not mine. I've linked the source there so you can check it out and find out more information about it. But this is a flow chart specifically for the United States. If you're in a different country, you're going to have a different flow chart based on how to maximize your wealth generation and reach goals that might be relevant for that country. So there are a couple steps here that you should take in this order, just because it'll help you prepare you for the next step, right? So creating a budget, paying for your essentials, making a minimum payment on all your debts, building a small emergency fund. The list goes on. There are 6 steps in general, each broken down to sub steps, right? Smaller steps, and they're highlighted above, right? At the end of the day, the final step is saving for other goals, which will vary from person to person. And it really depends on what you want your lifestyle to be like. Yeah, I can send the flow chart. It will be in the link that Greg sends along as well, but let me see if I can send it here. So I've linked the link there, but it provides a lot more information than the flow chart. But on that link, you can find the flow chart. Just look for graphic representation, but it will be shared afterwards as well. All right, so this is a great flow chart. Let's say you pick a goal from here. Then you have to ask yourself some questions, right? And it really comes down to what is considered a good financial goal. Now, there's a lot here, right? A financial goal is really just like any other goal, but you have to think about it with the mindset of financials in place, right? So setting a goal like I want to save more or I want to make more money, it's great, right? It's a good goal, but it's not helpful, right, as a financial goal, because it's not well defined and it's difficult to measure success, right? You'll find that financial goals share many traits of non-financial goals in terms of best practices. And the first thing here is that goals should be measurable, right? If they aren't, then how will you know that you've made progress on that goal, right? Money is the one thing anyone can do with money is measure it, right? And how well you're tracking in that regard. For example, what does it mean to save more, right? Instead of saying I want to save more, say I want to save $200 every month, right? Set a time frame and set an amount. And say what it's for, right? You want to save $200 every month for your emergency fund, right? With that in mind, this allows you to track towards your goal. Did you save $200? Did you save over $200? Or maybe under? Right? So it's all about it's all about measuring that and seeing where you are month to month and being reactive about it, right? And addressing issues why you can't save that much or why you're over saving. Maybe you can reallocate your funds elsewhere. The second thing here is actionable, right? Sure, it's great to say you can save $200 a month, but if you don't make enough money or if your budget's not realistic to save $200 a month, it's not a good goal because then you're just setting yourself up for a failure. Yeah, please do share. I'm not sure if you want to come off mute because you'll be recorded, but feel free to type in the chat as well.
Yeah. So hi, Alan. I've come on along once or twice. My name is Suzanne. I have my master's in finance from Baruch from 2007, and I did some financial coaching like personally, but I think that everything you're saying is great. I have a certain style that's a little bit different where I have a very hands-on approach to it. And I just wanted to share what works for me, and people have different styles and different techniques to get to their goals. But I think it has a lot to do with lifestyle. And I'm a very, very frugal woman. And like I put myself through my undergrad at FIT, I put myself through my master's at Baruch. I bought my first property, I think by like 26 or 27, because I'm very frugal. And I think that sometimes we talk about goals, but we have to like, what does that come down to? That breaks down to lifestyle, and like, making your own lunch, making your own smoothies, like how do you keep the money that you earn? You can make a ton of money, but if you spend a ton of money, then you don't have much left. And that's fine. That's a lifestyle issue. So I just kind of wanted to share that, like, I personally, I think I live like as frugal as like my grandmother's generation, sometimes that like went through the Great Depression. So, like, for example, I hand wash some of my sweaters instead of sending them to the dry cleaning. This was like before Zoom life. Because not everything, I went to FIT for my undergrad. If it says how something is supposed to be washed, it's actually one option. It's not necessarily the only option. So I find all these ways, like I saved my tax returns for 10 years and that was my down payment on my first property. Every time when I was 15 years old, someone told me, anytime you get money you're not expecting, put it into savings. So I had all these like savings games that I used to play with myself and play, whatever, in my different accounts and stuff like that. But one of the things I'm kind of working on now is I have, with my husband, I have two apartments here in Brooklyn, and my parents own some property in upstate New York where it's like a lot more affordable, outside of like the city, like up, like close to Canada. And and this is not to get too ambitious, but like we bought a home a year or two ago, and I wanted a contractor to do something that I really didn't have the capacity to do, and we paid for that. But then I painted both apartments myself, and I finished the floors myself. I didn't know how to do that, and I figured it out. I think that I don't know exactly, but I think that saved me $10,000. And I I plan on learning how to do what I can to take care of my parents' homes. And so one of my issues with this generation, which, I'm a part of this generation, is that they don't want to get their hands dirty. So I just want to say that how are we going to obtain our goals? It's by making your own lunch, it's by making your own smoothies, it's by painting your own homes, it's by having tools in your toolkit. So I just wanted to, not to like, that these goals are absolutely wonderful, but like I work hard to keep my money that I make. Anyway, so
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate that. Yeah, see, frugal living is definitely something to consider. Lifestyle, all very important things. In the interest of time, I think we'll just carry on with the
I
presentation
apologize.
for now. But thank you. No, but thank you very much.
Yeah, just so people can obtain their goals. I apologize. And I don't mean to take the thunder from you, Alan. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is very admirable, and thanks for sharing. Right, it does definitely leads into the next topic I was going to talk about. Right, just making sure it's realistic. Right, I would say that I think that there is a degree of understanding your own lifestyle and asking yourself, hey, this is something that I want and can do. Right, if it is, go for it. If not, then you'd want to make lifestyle changes to accommodate and reach your goal, and that's the big thing here. Right, we really want to keep in mind that, hey, you can't say I want to save $10,000 a month and make no sacrifices or not make more money. Right, it's really thinking through those goals and understand, hey, be ambitious but realistic. Right, it's not going to happen overnight, and it's all about working through those goals and thinking about the short and long term of it. That's a gist of, I would say, what's considered a good financial goal. Let's walk through some examples of it. Obviously, it's not going to be holistic of everything, but it'll give us a good idea about how to think about them and how to break down some of these goals. So the first one here is saving in a 3-month emergency fund, right? It's simple, straightforward, and something that we should all have at a minimum when it comes to your personal finances. Someone mentioned in the chat that you can save money in an online savings account, not linked to your checking account, specifically a high yield savings account, preferred, right? Definitely plays a huge part in that. But when we talk about a savings account, right, why is it so important? I mentioned this before, but just to bring it up again, there is a considerable number of Americans who can't cover a $1,000 emergency fund, right, or emergency expense. Now that is a concern for everyone and for our economy, right? And this statistic, admittedly, may be a little bit skewed depending on how we read the data here, because you can say, hey, if you pay from savings, who's to say that's not your emergency fund savings, right? Versus being able to pay it up front or to borrow from folks, right? So a little skewed, but I would say it still highlights an important problem that we might have in America. Now, when we talk about a 3-month emergency fund, right? What does that mean? Let's break down the numbers, right? You want to dig for your goal and really break down what does that really entail, right? So an emergency fund, as it's defined, is basically your essential expenses that you require to live from month to month. So if you lose your job tomorrow, how much money do you need to survive, right? This includes your rent, groceries, utilities. If you don't have rent, then mortgage, right? Insurance, you name it. But it's etc. expenses that you have to pay no matter what. Right? You need a place to live and you got to eat. You can't get around those. And once you have all of those numbers, we said 3 months for emergency fund, so just multiply that by 3. And that'll give you the number you need to save, right? So just to work for an example, I pulled some numbers, not reflective of anything. I used New York City as an example, just because a lot of folks are in New York City. And some of these numbers are outrageous. It's true. New York City is an outrageous place to live. Don't live here for too long if you can afford it. If you think about making a lot of money, right, or trying to save a lot of money, this is not the place to be without making a lot of sacrifices. But let's say rent in New York City is $2,000, groceries $400, utilities $300, transit $127, assuming you only use MTA, right, monthly. So when you sum that all up, you multiply that by 3. The number you want to shoot for is $8,481, right? That's the number you want to save. Now, the goal is more concrete now. You're not just saying, I want to save 3 months of emergency fund. Now you want to say, hey, I want to save $8,481 for my emergency fund. And you can work from there and work backwards. Now you think about the action plan, right? What does that look like? Your time frame, I said a year, but you can break it up more depending on what's realistic for you and what your capacity is when it comes to this, right? So if you break it up to a year, that's saving $706.75 per month. That's a pretty good amount of change depending on your income, right? So there are a couple of options here. You can either make more money and you save the excess. Right? What that means is you keep your lifestyle the same. So avoid lifestyle inflation. So just because you start making 6 figures doesn't mean you need to live a 6-figure life. Right? Just keep that in mind when you start making more money. And then there's the other side of things, right? You want to go over your budget and you want to reduce your non-essential expenses. Now, what I really mean is you either make more money so you can save it, or you make the same amount of money and you reduce what you don't need to spend, at least until you save that in an emergency fund, right? Because if we know anything about life, stuff happens, an emergency happens, right? So it's better to have that fund earlier on rather than later on. And those are the 2 triggers. But let's not forget that there are windfalls in life, right? You probably won't win the lottery, but you can get that tax refund, right? Or maybe you inheritance of some kind, or gifts from folks, right? So these are considered windfalls, money that you don't expect to get, but are fortunate to have for whatever reason. Instead of spending it for the next big vacation, you should just save it for your emergency fund, right? So those are a couple ways you can think about, hey, how can I achieve this goal, right? And you can change things. You can change the length of time. You can change maybe what is exactly as essential expenses to lower this number. But there are things you can do to achieve your goals based on various metrics you can toggle, right? Now, this is a relatively simple goal, but there's a path forward, right? It's not, depending who you are, it might not be an easy path, but there's a path forward for this goal. Now, if we're talking about a long-term goal, right? Like buying a house, this is like hard mode for financial planning. You're gonna have to make sacrifices, especially as we know, every year, it seems like it's harder and harder to buy a home in America, especially in the places that you want to live in. And I won't go over the entire home buying process. I have another presentation for that that I did with Greg, and he can share it. I know I sprung this on him, so he might take some time to share, but there's a video about it. But just to pull one slide from it, just to illustrate how kind of crazy it is to buy a home, and also to illustrate where you can get started. Right. So really, when you have a long-term goal, a long-term financial goal, you think about the research. What does this entail? Right? It entails a lot of steps, not necessarily in this order, but there's some form of these steps, nor are these a finite number of steps. The home buying process is long. When I purchased my first home, it took us over half a year to really decide, find it, and even took us even longer to prepare to get to that point, right? It was a very long saving period. It didn't happen overnight. But knowing exactly how to prepare to buy a home would save you a lot of headaches over time, and doing that research upfront, pays dividends really. All right, so I'm going to break the home buying process into a couple of goals that we can do over time up until you start looking for homes. Obviously, if you don't have the money to look for a home, there's no point looking around for a home. And maybe it's a nice activity on the weekend, right? Otherwise, if you really want to think about how to get to that home, right? In the example of this long-term goal, all long-term goals can be broken up. Buying a home is no exception to that. But there might be other aspects that are not listed here. These are just the top 3 that I think come to my mind when it comes to purchasing home. So a couple ones here, and I'll dive into more detail for each of these. The first one here is improving a credit score, right? So our credit score, high level, this will impact your interest rate and your PMI if you have one, right? So to translate that, what that really means is the better your credit score is, the lower mortgage you have to pay, right? So that makes it so you can afford a home, right? Your affordability for a home goes up, and we'll dig into more details. Then there's also the reduced debt to income ratio. I know, sounds kind of complicated. Sounds very financy, right? It's not that crazy. What this really means is the less debt and the more income you have, the more money the lender is willing to give you, right? So a larger home you're able to buy. Last one here, everyone knows about this one, comes up all the time. You got to save for a down payment, right? You don't need a down payment for all home purchases, but if you are thinking about buying without maybe an FHA or any other special government program, conventional mortgage, then you're going to need a down payment. And really what a down payment is that you put money down for a home, right? To reduce the mortgage that you pay, which also reduces increases your ability to buy a home. Ideally, folks recommend 20%. You don't need to put 20% down, but that's the metric we'll use just because it's recommended. But 20% might not be doable depending on your financial situation and your location, right? So it's good to start thinking about this early on. If you're thinking about buying a home in New York City, you're easily looking at $1 million homes. Not always the case, but easily you could be looking at $1 million home. 20% of that is $200K, right? So it's a pretty hefty amount of change, which also feeds into the idea that early you start, the better. All right, so when it comes to credit scores, right, you can debate about what's a good credit score. I just pulled this number after looking at interest rates on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and you can put in a credit score there. But generally speaking, if you have a 750 plus credit score, you're going to be in a good place for most loans, and it'll give you the best interest rates. Right? Anything above that, you might see some improvement here and there. But you don't need a perfect 850 to get a home, right? Far from that. But having 750 is a pretty good place to be. Now, how do we achieve this goal, right? How do we achieve 750? It's measurable. It's a goal. It's something that we can work towards. So the first thing is to figure out how to track that credit score, right? A good recommendation is to track your credit score monthly for free. There's various ways you can do that. The way I do it is by opening up a credit card that's free, and I can track the credit score on a monthly basis, right? Chase, Discover, a lot of credit card companies have this option. And it's just, seeing how well you perform every month. And they'll even give you feedback for if you're doing well or not so well, and provide advice for what you can improve. Some things you can change, some things you can't, and you just have to keep paying your credit card over time to improve your score. And then there's several things you can do here, right? This is just like credit card, credit score 101, but just to walk folks through it. The biggest thing you can do here is just pay your credit card statements on time in full, right? If you don't have a credit card, open one, right? If you don't have any loans, credit card is an easy thing to open, assuming that you're able to pay in full and on time every month, right? If you do this steadily over an amount of time, eventually you'll pay it off, right? Or you'll increase your credit score, not pay it off. You should pay it off every month, but eventually you'll increase your credit score over time. The second thing here is to keep your credit utilization below 20%, which, one way you can do that is increasing your credit limit, right? Credit limit is essentially, you can think of it like, how much money is the bank willing to lend you, right? Credit utilization is basically your current debt divided by your total credit limit, right? So for example, if you owe $100 on your credit card and your credit limit was $1,000, your credit utilization is 10%, right? 100 divided by 1,000, right? That's 10%. Just because your credit card gives you a high credit limit, like $1,000, it doesn't mean you should use all of it. I know it's weird. Like, why would they give you money if they don't want you to use it? But that's just part of the calculation, and that's just how they run the numbers. So essentially, it's a game that you have to play to improve your credit score. Now, last one is an easy one. Just don't let your credit card go inactive. Right? One thing that credit card companies or credit score scorers or credit score companies care a lot about is that you have a credit history and a long credit history. So what that means is, the first credit card you ever opened, don't close it. Keep it open, right? Keep it active. Maybe you spend 25 cents on, actually nothing's 25 cents anymore. Maybe you spend $1 on a bag of chips, right? For that credit card, once every couple months. You want to keep that credit card open, and the longer it's open, the more it helps you when it comes to your credit score. These are the top three. There's other things as well, like diversifying the type of loans that you have, right? And avoiding opening new credit cards, but these are the ones that get impacted the most. You can read more about it in the source there as well. How many years does a credit you refuse to pay show up on your credit report? I believe it's like 7 to 10 years, but it varies depending on who you're asking, right? There's 3 major credit bureaus in the United States, right? There's TransUnion, Experian, and one more, Equifax, right? So they all probably calculate it a little bit differently. But if you really want to know, hey, is that still showing up on your credit report? You can quickly just, get your credit report for free. Go to the annualcreditreport.com. Don't have a typo in it because it's easy to make a typo on that and then you end up on a phishing site. But if you go to that site, you can get your credit report for free annually. I believe for now, you can get it free any day. But in the past, it was on an annual basis. But just check it every year and see if your credit report indicates that you haven't paid for that specific credit card. And that's one way to double confirm. And then what do we have here? So that's one thing about your credit score. The next thing is your debt to income ratio. Folks like to say that your debt to income ratio of 36% or lower is better. There's the idea of a front end and a back end debt to income ratio. I'm not going to differentiate between the two. because it's too confusing for this specific workshop. But the idea behind it is your total debts divided by your total income, right? So if your total debts, if you tally them all up and it's $30,000, your total income is $100,000, right? Your gross income, your debt to income ratio is 30%. Banks, mortgage companies like it when you have a 36% ratio or lower, right? The lower, the better, because in their mind, if you have less debt, that means you're more likely to pay your mortgage on time. The more debt you have, the less likely you're able to pay your mortgage on time because you have all these other debt responsibilities to cater to. There's two ways around this. You make more money or you pay down your debt. Ideally, you do both. Is the minimum monthly payment for each debt? When you say minimum monthly payment, do you mean for a credit card? Yeah, so if you pay your, I think Jason's asking a question to another question that was asked here. But if you pay your minimum monthly payment, then you won't have, to calculate the debt income ratio. I'm pretty sure it's your total debt versus your minimum monthly payment, but it might vary from mortgage company to mortgage company. I'm not gonna say I know all the formulas for every mortgage company. And if you want to find out exactly how it's calculated, find a mortgage company that you might want to work with, call them up and ask them, hey, how much money can I borrow for a mortgage? It's going to be free. And they'll ask you, hey, do you want us to run a hard pull in your credit report? Say, no, thank you. And just give them your numbers. This is how much I make, this is how much debt I have, how much I pay per month. And they'll run the numbers for you to tell you, hey, do you meet our criteria or not? That's one secret way that you can find out if you meet this ratio for free right off the bat. Here's another question. How do you achieve 800 plus credit score? There's a lot of ways to achieve 800 plus credit score. The biggest thing is just commitment and dedication to not missing any debt and paying debts on time for a long period of time, right? So it took me, you're stuck at 790. Well, that's a great score to be stuck at. So I wouldn't be too disappointed about that. Personally, the people that I know, and myself included, have never broken 800 without having a mortgage, right? Or different types of loans. But obviously, don't get a mortgage just so you can get to 800, right? It's just not worth it. It doesn't make sense. 790 is a great place to be. So let's see what we have here. Can one late payment on your credit card affect your credit score? Yes, one late payment can affect your credit score. One hot tip: just because you have a late payment doesn't mean you can't call your credit card company and say, "Hey, I just missed it by a day. Can you not report it to their credit reporting agencies so they don't mark it on my report?" It doesn't hurt to call them and ask and just say, "I'll pay it right now, no problem." And just say, missed it by one day, not a big deal. If you're already past that point in time and it's been months since you had a late payment, it's probably ready on your credit report, but check. And if it's not there yet, call your credit card company and just ask if they can not report it. Because if it's only one and you've never had them before, probably not a big deal. Right? But the second it gets on your credit report, it's going to be a little trickier to undo that. Other than just consistently paying over time, so it improves. What about if the husband and wife have separate credit card and each reports own salary? We're married, but have separate credit cards. Yeah, so your credit report and credit score are for individuals, right? So your husband and your husband or your wife should have no bearing on your own specific credit report and credit score. I pull credit reports for my wife and I, and it's always separate. Right, and we can I analyze them but you should definitely look at them, and don't just assume that if yours is good, so is your spouse's. Right? Definitely make sure to pull them both in check, because if you need to, they might come into play when you're trying to buy a home. Right? You might need both incomes, and in that case, they will look at both credit reports. Right? It's not going to be a single person's. All right, cool. Moving on to the next one. 20% down payment. Yeah, 20% arbitrary number, but we needed a goal to set around. You could do 15, 10, depending on if you want to pay PMI and depending on the type of loan that you're getting, or even less, right? Depending on the type of loan that you're getting. The big thing here is to do research on your desired neighborhood, because 20% doesn't mean a lot. It's 20% of something. And depending on where you want to buy, you want to see what the average, maybe not the average, what the medium house price is, and then decide, hey, is that realistic, right? Is that really where I want to buy a property? If the answer is yes, then go forth, right? Calculate a number. If you're in New York City and you're like, I want to pay $1 million for a home, that's $200,000 that you have to save. The United States is a big place. You don't have to limit yourself just in New York City. But if that's the case, right, no matter what that number is, figure out that number and then go from there, because that will be sort of your benchmark for how much you save and to help you motivate you. The thing here that you want to do, like someone mentioned already, is have a high yield savings account. Save your money, right? Just drop your money into a high yield savings account as you save it. It's much better than a savings account because it'll pay higher interest, right? And we could talk a whole bunch about, hey, it's a good thing, is it a bad thing? Is it too good to be true? I'm going to tell you that a high yield savings account is the way to go. No one's going to say otherwise. So definitely open one and take a look. You can do that tonight. Second thing here is do not gamble your down payment. I've had some people come to me and say, hey, I got like $20,000. I need 40,000. What if I just go into the stock market and go all in? What about I just short off that money, go to cryptocurrency, do something crazy, right? You're probably gonna lose all of it. Don't gamble with your down payment. That's not the time to shoot your shot. Definitely don't do that. You want to be disciplined and you want to save steadily over time, right? You don't want to start from zero, which is what would happen if you gambled your down payment. Last thing here is that you want to track your savings over time, right? And you want to estimate your completion, right? If you're saving $1,000 per month, what does that look like over a 10, 15-year period when it comes to down payment, right? You want to figure out, hey, do I really want to save for that amount of time? If not, you have a couple choices. Make more money and save it, or reduce your expenses until you save enough for a down payment. Right, so there's a lot of things you can move around and change as long as you understand the goal and how much to save for. All right, so can you advise on taking home equity on paying off your credit card? I hear this a lot, and what I'm going to tell you is that it's dependent on your situation, right? It depends on your home equity loan terms, right? Your home equity terms, and also your credit card terms, right? Is there a world where this would make financial sense? Yes. Is there a world where it would make no financial sense? Also, yes. It depends on what those terms are, but there's just not enough information per se to tell you yes or no right off the bat for this one. But yeah, so if you run the math and you find that, hey, taking out a home equity to pay off my credit card will save you more money over time, then probably the right move, right? Given that you understand the risk associated with it, and vice versa, right? It's understanding what that means and what the outcome for that is. Seems first-time homeowner programs that they have out there in the past, they helped my friend with her down payment on a multifamily home in Jersey City. Not sure what's available these days. Yes, one huge thing to research while you're getting started on down payment is to find out what home assistance programs are out there. New Jersey has a couple. Definitely do your research, right? New York has a couple too. Usually there are income limits around them and also property price limits around them. But if you fall into them, it doesn't hurt to look. I definitely encourage you to explore and find out what you qualify for. Usually when you go to a mortgage company, they will have knowledge about it too, right? And from their point of view, as long as you buy a home, they make money, right? So they'll entice you with these programs, even though they'll market it like they're giving it to you, but the government's giving it to you. But that's one way to do research as well. A quick Google search would show what programs you might qualify for. What's your opinions on CDs for savings in comparison to high yield savings accounts? My opinion is it depends on how long or how far out, if you're talking about in terms of a house, or really anything, right? It depends on how far out your financial goal is. Right? CDs, certificate deposits, for people who don't know, pay a higher interest rate than high yield savings accounts. But generally speaking, you have flexibility of your money, right? It's not as liquid. But if you're just saving it for a long-term goal, like buying a home, you're not going to touch it anyway. So certificate deposit is a fine place to have it. If I'm buying a home 10 years down the line, then yes, I would dump my money into certificate deposit. If I'm buying it in like a year or two, right? I might not, but if you have a certificate deposit that's like a year long or 6 months, it still might be in your best interest. It depends on where you are in the home buying process, or where you are at the start of it, right? If you're ready to look, you don't want your money tied up that you can't take it out for the actual down payment when it comes down to it, right? So I think it's great, depending on your timeline. Is it a good idea to put the savings in the S&P 500 or NASDAQ? I just said this. Don't gamble your down payment. No, I mean, an S&P 500 and NASDAQ. I mean, depends what you mean by NASDAQ, but an S&P 500 is a great index tracking. That is a great investment tool. It's not a great home buying tool unless you're not buying a home for a long time period and you're flexible on when to buy the home. Right? If the S&P 500 were to crash tomorrow, I could tell you're not buying your home and you shouldn't withdraw the money, right? And you never know with the stock market, you can't predict it, right? So if you have a hard timeline, I wouldn't, like I said, don't gamble your down payment. Save at a steady rate unless you can afford a long time horizon, right? Really long, plus you are flexible with your timeline, right? You can wait out a recession basically. Would it be advisable to withdraw on your 401k as a down payment for a home? I personally wouldn't, but it's an option, right? And you can definitely look into it. Depends on what your withdrawal is. IRAs have a stipulation where you can take out 10K, I believe, Roth IRAs for a home, right? For your first home. I would look into, I'm not sure if 401ks have the same stipulation or if you're just borrowing against it and it's going to be a loan. So definitely I could take a closer look if you're curious and I can get back to you on that. Someone else did. So you did. It's great. So that's good. Definitely good to share. So you did, and you had to pay for penalty interest. Yes. So in that case, you would have, I would say for the folks who have not done that and are looking into it, do the math, right? Is that interest worth it, right? Is it basically you're making a trade-off, right? You're thinking about this in sort of a very mathematical approach. The interest that you would pay on your 401k, is it lower or more than the amount of money you would have saved on your mortgage if you had not withdrawn from 401k, right? But that also, there also might be a fine line in terms of like, if I don't withdraw from 401k, I can't actually get the home, right? So you got to think about those trade-offs. So I'm right, I withdraw 1x in your life without penalties from a 401k for home purchases. Yeah, so I would need to do more research to get, understanding the fine terminology for that. So, but people have varying experiences with that. Personally, the way I think about it is your 401k is for your retirement. So the way I think about it is, you can't just retire on property alone. Not everyone needs a home, right? I'm gonna say that right now. Not everyone needs a home. Everyone needs to retire, right? So really think about that. Of course, if you retire with a home, that's one less expense to pay. But there's a world where you will starve with a home. So So it's really thinking about the trade-off there. Personally, I think a retirement is a higher priority than having a home, right? Okay, what else we got there? Is it okay to buy a starter? What can you afford rather than your desired neighborhood to build up your equity, upgrade one day, and as you know, neighborhoods can change too. Yes, it's okay to buy a starter home, right? A home is still a good investment. It keeps, historically speaking, it stays, it stays up to date with inflation. It tracks inflation, so it's a very good way to not pay rent and have, build equity over time, right? So obviously you can have a starter. A lot of people do this, right? There's a lot of tax savings around it too. Get the starter, sell it, and upgrade, right? And they repeat and rinse the process. So it's definitely an option. And I see Suzanne over there nodding, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, definitely. So it's an option. Let's see what here. Yes, details matter for the 401k. Yeah, if you're curious, I can definitely take a closer look at that. All right. Before more questions start up, let's summarize now. So 2023, new year. Decide on your 2023 financial goals. Like if they're vague, that's fine, right? The next step is breaking down each goal into numbers. So if they're vague, break them down. Figure out what exactly each goal means, right? And once you have that, do research and come up with an action plan, right? If your numbers don't add up, then break down the goals further, right? Repeat and rinse until you have financial success. At the end of the day, really it comes down to two things, right? Do I make more money and or reduce my expenses, right? And that has to do with the lifestyle that you want, but understanding and how to set those goals will really play a major part here. All right, last thing here. I provide, for those of you who've been here, I provide a free 30-minute financial literacy sessions to talk about your financial situation and to answer questions, right? If you want me to dig into details, happy to. This is not a segue into a paid financial literacy coaching session. So I'm not gonna say, hey, 30 minutes, I'm gonna cut you off right here. Got you. You gotta pay like more for the next 30 minutes. Really, it's about a limitation for time, right? So if I can't find time on my schedule, well, if you can't find time on my schedule, then you have to book it further out. But it's always going to be free. You can click on that link there and it should take you here. Where, I mean, it's booked for the next Thursday already, but you can look up other February dates and so on. But I'm always happy to, chat and discuss your financial situation. And what we got here? Okay, so my email. Feel free to reach out to me and just contact me. Let's see if I can copy it here. I'm always happy to chat, email or Zoom, phone call with the financial literacy coaching sessions, whatever works best for you. I'm willing to adapt as long as you adapt to my schedule. And besides that, check out my YouTube channel. Got to plug it in. I'm so close to my Sweet 200. So, we're getting there. If everyone here subscribes, I'll get there. But, no harsh feelings if not. Last thing here is my next workshop is at March 23rd, 6 p.m. Introduction to cryptocurrency, very high level. Don't come to haze me about cryptocurrency. I'll do my best to introduce folks as much as possible to that. And Greg posted the link in the chat, so feel free to check that out. Yeah, I'm happy to take questions now. Thank you to Greg for organizing. Before we take questions, Greg, is there anything you want to?
Thank you so much, Alan. Yeah, as always, thank you very much for sharing your insight and taking the time. And as I mentioned, as Alan mentioned, I put the link to the Intro to Cryptocurrency webinar, which is coming up in March. So feel free to join us for that. It should be a pretty interesting discussion, as Alan said. It's going to be, it could be a little high level, but we're looking forward to it. We'll try to make it as easy as we can. And really appreciate everybody's engagement and participation this evening. And, if anyone would like to share their own financial goals, if they feel comfortable doing so in the chat, feel free to do so, because, sometimes it's good just to have to put it out there into the ether sometimes, even if it's vague right now or you're not totally sure what you want to do. I did see a couple of comments throughout the presentation about whether we'll be sharing the links in the recording. So again, absolutely, we will. We will send out an email at some point in the next couple of days. Try to get it out tomorrow if we can with the video, as well as some links to a variety of the things that Alan was referencing throughout the presentation. And thanks again to Alan for allowing people to sign up for sessions with him. Definitely take advantage of that if you'd like to chat with him a little bit further about some things and bounce some ideas off him and get his opinion on things. So thank you very much, as always, Alan, for that. All that being said, are there any other questions? Let's take a look at the chat here and see what else we have.
Yeah, so the first question that I see come in was, is a co-op a good investment? You're buying shares in a corporation, not a real property. Makes me nervous. Yes, it would make me nervous as well. But I have friends who've bought with a co-op, and it's not bad, right? Some might even say if you're in New York City, a co-op is one of the only reasonable things you can buy, given how high the prices are for everything else. Right, condos can sometimes be double the price or 1.5 times the price. Co-ops are less for purchase price, but HOA fees might be higher, and entering them might be more difficult because you have to go for an interview. There's more restrictions around it. So that's one thing to think about. Co-ops, I am split between it, just because yes, you're buying shares in a corporation, not a real property. It's kind of tricky there, but if that's all you can afford at this very moment, it's not a bad deal to think about as a starter home, right? And then to move on from there when you think about it. But co-ops generally also have very good amenities, depending on which one you buy, which are reflected in their HOA fee. So something to think about. It's not terrible. Just do your research when it comes to that specific co-op and make sure you do due diligence, right? Whether it's buying a condo or co-op, right? Same idea. Make sure you do your research and due diligence for that co-op or condo board. Things I used to do, I would live off of 24 bi-weekly payments each year and save the extra 2 payments. Since it's not a question, but it's really good advice actually. Yeah, so saving extra 2 payments is definitely a trick that you can do, especially when it comes to budgeting. What do we have here? Do you have an interest in becoming a financial advisor? I don't. The first thing is I'm not qualified to become one for many reasons. There's many more people. I've met many financial advisors who are much more qualified and much smarter than I am when it comes to these financial personal financial topics. But at some point I'll get my own financial advisor. But I think all of us can benefit from having a base level of financial literacy and going from there. So that's what I represent, the base level, some form of base level financial literacy. But I don't have any intention of becoming a financial advisor anytime soon. Done, subscribe, just music to my ears. Thanks for subscribing. I believe the withdrawal from 401k for home is up to 50% of the invested balance, up to 50K. Awesome. Yeah, Jason, thanks for finding the information. I appreciate it. Any thoughts on how you say yes, for those shops before aware, I would of the FIRE movement, or I like to think I am, right? So the idea of financial independence and retiring early. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how to retire early. And retire early means earlier than 62, right? Which is like the earliest age you can retire based on Social Security. My thoughts around it are that it's expensive to retire. Like, we aren't set up to retire in America. Easily people can retire sort of in a poverty level. But things to think about are insurance and health costs, right? Those are huge. And also rent or mortgage, right? Like those are probably going to be your two biggest expenses, if anything, right? Food you can always cook, right? There are things you can tweak and toggle, but those are the two big things to think about. Like I'm sure a lot of you, if you work for a full-time company or the government, you have a pretty cushy health insurance. Once you retire, that's no longer going to be true. Sure, you have Medicare, but it doesn't have everything in it. And if you ever looked at Medicare, it's a complicated beast. There's like 4 different parts. In my head, there's no good reason to have 4 different parts. Just tell me, can I have insurance or not? But do your research on how much insurance can cost. It can be pretty crazy. But retirement for me is to really think about, how much am I paying to live today? And chances are it's a percentage of that, right? You're probably not spending the same amount of money for transit or for food, right? That as you would in retirement. So I would say at a base level, what are your expenses today? And do you want to live it up when you retire, or are you okay with downsizing? And that will be your multiplying factor for how much you can expect to spend in retirement. And then once you have that, we can go to a whole discussion about how to get to your final retirement number. Greg, I think I have some recording on the whole like FIRE early retirement movement, which if you figure that out, you figured out normal retirement. So maybe Greg can share that with folks. Good basic info, which they taught in high school. Did you know that 50% of schools in high schools in America are required to, not 50%, 50% of states in America are required to teach financial literacy. They're not required to teach specific topics, just financial literacy in general. So no guarantee what you get, but there is a rule around it. But we'll get there. We'll all get there someday. But if you like this information, share it with other people. That's my goal here, right? To make sure that we share and distribute as much of this information as possible. Just because Greg sends you the slides and recording doesn't mean you have to keep it to yourself. Hit that email forward button and share with other people.
On that note, Alan, a lot of people were messaging asking if people who aren't Baruch alumni can join these. And while we do advertise these to Baruch alumni, they're intended for Baruch alumni. Nothing is stopping someone else from joining one of these webinars. So if you do have friends, friends of Baruch, they can definitely hop on here. So don't be afraid to share a link if you have friends who'd be interested in checking this out.
Yeah, definitely. More comments about co-ops. Co-ops is good. My credit score is over 800. Awesome. Those are both very good pieces of information. Purchasing a co-op is much better than paying rent. Yeah, definitely. That's equity you're still contributing toward, right? Fingers crossed I'll break 800 someday. Yes, I hope you do someday too. It's an achievement. I have friends that advise me to invest in stocks, but I'm not a high risk person. Losing money is not my thing. I would rather save it in a bank rather than losing money on stocks. Yeah, so you have to strike that balance depending on what type of person and your risk tolerance is. Investing, I hate to say it, but investing is the only sure way to generate wealth, right? Especially generational wealth. Now, or you can make a lot of money, right? That's not to say that you have to invest in things that are super risky, like a single stock, right? So you can definitely look into mutual funds, right, and stuff like that. But if you're starting, especially for me speaking from personal experience, if you're starting from a low-income family, right, you don't have a lot to start off with. You're starting off at zero, right? If your money isn't growing rapidly due to investments, there's just no way that you can save enough to beat inflation and to live your life, right? Depending on what your income is. Not all of us, unfortunately, are going to earn 6 figures or 7 figures over our life. So it's really thinking about how to make your money work for you. But index funds are a good place to start. Hopefully that doesn't mean that your 401k is just sitting there. You're not investing the money. Investing is very important for just growing it. It will make it easier for you to grow your wealth over time. What about multifamily dwellings? How many units should you look for? Actually, Suzanne, I saw you were about to say something, so I might as well.
Oh, I just wanted to add that there's so much emphasis in like how much money you make. And I just want to give 2 points is that I also, like you, I put myself through college and all this and whatever, my master's and whatnot. And I just did a free workshop with Tony Robbins that he does every single year. And he talks about the benefit those of us have who didn't have safety nets is that we have to make things happen. And there's a lot of people in this world, in this country, that were given safety nets and the they don't have the tenacity to go out there and get it. So those, Alan, I just want to say that you and I and folks like us who had to make it happen on our own have the ability to go into the world year after year and make things happen. And so there's so much that we gain from that, you know? And so let's not discredit ourselves that we weren't given, silver spoons or whatnot. Because the greats, Tony Robbins, Oprah, so many self made billionaires, it's because from a young age they had to figure it out. And that is a tool that we get to use every single day of our life, every year of our life, every decade, pivoting, pivoting, pivoting. That's just the first point, is that I think it's a blessing that I have the ability to live a great life based on my own ability. The second thing is I just have to be honest with you. I have not made a lot of money in my life, but I'm very wise with my money and I spend it very well. And I put my money towards the things that I value. And so don't let that limit you. If you think you should be earning a certain amount, I have had more, I've been in a better financial strength than a lot of people who make a lot more money than me. So don't let that limit you as well. So these is that you have the ability to create your life even without those things, So anyway.
Thank you, Suzanne. That she's describing the Baruch experience. Our alumni have grit. Our alumni, they work their way up, and that is the Baruch story. So thank you, Suzanne. And on that same note, actually, it's another shameless plug here. Another webinar we'll be having later in the semester that I'm going to put the link to. We have the registration link. It's a May webinar. We're doing one about salary transparency, talking about some negotiation tactics for your own salary, since we were talking a little bit about your income. So definitely check that out as well, because that's another interesting webinar coming up later that touches on some interesting topics and how the new salary transparency laws could impact that. So definitely sign up for that one as well. Just put it in the chat.
Gotta love the plugs.
Lots of plugs.
No, Suzanne, thank you for sharing that. I agree. You can definitely make do with what you have, and it's a lot of it is like mindset and making sacrifices where they need to be made to achieve the lifestyle that you want. All right, here. What about multifamily dwellings? How many units should you look for? Well, I can tell you I'm not a real estate investor, so no comment on that. I've looked into it quite a bit, but have not executed on it, so I will not comment further on that one. But if folks have experience with it, definitely, you can thread in Zoom now. Did you know that? You can thread in Zoom now. But definitely respond to that if you have opinions on multifamily dwellings in the chat. But if I'm sure you're doing this already, but Bigger Pockets is a good place to do research and to look into real estate investing. Jason told me I'm qualified. I'd love to hear it. Let's see. Move to a less expensive location when you retire. Many people do. Yes, a lot of people. That's why people love to move to Florida. That's why it's like the retirement location, right? So it's definitely more affordable than many places in America. Let's see here. Roth or pre-tax 401k, especially in high tax city and state like New York. Great response from Jason. Federal taxes are low now and likely will increase in the future. So better off with Roth now so you don't have to pay taxes in retirement when taxes will likely be higher. Yes, there is a lot of research around this about the effective tax rate. Surprisingly, now we are historically speaking, we have very low taxes now. And we have very low taxes now, chances are it will be higher much later on. And if you read a lot of tax cut laws, or not laws, but tax cut bills, what you'll notice is that we'll cut taxes now and we'll increase them in XYZ year, right? So it's already sort of written in that tax rates will go up at a certain point. But yes, I agree with that as a general piece of advice. Yes, investing is how you grow your wealth. Needs to be diversified and have a long-term view. Do you cover investing? I did. I have some workshop around investing that maybe Greg can find.
I'm going to post a link to our YouTube playlist for many of Alan's previous financial literacy webinars. And I've also gotten some questions for some of our recordings of other webinars we've done as well about other topics without Alan, with other presenters. And so check out our YouTube page because we have many of our events on there. So so check that out. I'll post that link in just a second.
Yeah. Awesome. People are responding up there. This is what I like to see. People engaging with each other, so I have less work. That's not work, but like you get the idea. It's always good to see the audience engaging. Cool. I think most of these questions are answered, but happy to do emails. Or if you want to follow up with a financial literacy coaching session, happy to do that too. Yeah. Otherwise,
everyone knows how to reach Alan. Thank you, Alan, for providing your email, the ability to schedule a session to chat with you. So if anyone does have additional questions, feel free to reach out to Alan. I'm grateful for him to provide that. Definitely sign up for some of our future events. We hope to see you at our next financial literacy sessions with Alan. And I want to thank everyone who attended this evening and for everyone's participation. You know, I think some of our in some future financial literacy webinars, it'd be great to get a little bit more conversation going, maybe at the end of the presentations, to have even more interaction for our alumni. So I think that's something I definitely would like to do as we continue on throughout not only this semester, but future webinars beyond. So thank you again to everyone for being here. We'll send out the recording shortly afterwards. And thank you again, Alan, for being here this evening. Thanks to all our alumni who joined us. And are there any parting words you'd like to end with, Alan?
Yeah, I would say love the conversations, love the chat, and thank you to everyone for coming. And I appreciate you, hopping on after a long day of work. I don't discount that. And I hope you see you in the next workshop.
Wishing you a very good 2023 as we continue to plan out our financial year ahead, and looking forward to seeing you at some more events. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thank you again, Alan. Thank you, everyone. Take care, everybody. Thank you.